JavaScript has technically been reloaded. This used to be viewed as an archaic, hard-to-use client technology that some people embraced, but others didn't really like it because you had to go way beyond your comfort level just to get things to highlight or move around the page. But jQuery has basically changed the rules for all of us. jQuery has made it easy for middle-tier developers and other non-developers for the most part, and just to create websites that have a little bit of interactivity. People can actually find little script blocks and other people that have done nice code examples that can make life easier in development of your web application, so you don't have to recreate the wheel every single time. MVC4 has several out-of-the-box unobtrusive JavaScripts for validation and for handling AJAX. jQuery also has to be considered when designing your UI. This is true also if you need modals for entry forms, dialogues, or anything else like that. Also, you can use tabs for loading of partial views, and then you can use it for getting and posting data via AJAX calls. This is very common in most of your middle to large web applications that are built in MVC. jQuery in JavaScript is a must for these applications to function properly. Otherwise, you can imagine how boring it would be if you had a form and you had to fill out the entire form, click a submit button, and wait till it did a server post back to tell you if you had any errors on the page or not. With the jQuery unobtrusive in there, as you move through the page, you can throw errors out that read from the validation attributes based off the model, or you can wait till a submit button. But again, before it even goes back to the server, you can actually have the client-side validation kick in there. Also, we use AJAX calls a lot to load partial views so that it's less taxing when a page loads. So until somebody actually demands that information, you want to withhold it, perhaps in a partial view, and then when they fire an event, that's when you want to go and retrieve that data. If you want your MVC web application to really shine, you need to learn to make use of modals and tabs and other things like that within MVC, because these make good use of screen real estate opposed to having to hop from page to page to page just to display a subset of information. For instance, you can have tabs, you can have like 5 or 6 or 7 tabs that can all contain a section of information that can be loaded on one particular view page by itself. These are also perfect controls to use with partial views, whereas you can have on-demand loading by way of AJAX, so then again when your main page loads, you're only loading what the user sees until they fire off an event that needs to be called. And you do this by loading the tab content with AJAX. This will also yield a better user experience for your web application. And jQuery UI does have the tab functionality, but so do many third-party tools like Telerik or Kendo, Component One, Infragistics, MooTools, and so forth. Basically what you want to do is either use the core jQuery and maybe jQuery UI that comes out of the box if you're comfortable with that, or I encourage you to explore other tools and find a tool set that kind of fits you. One of the best ways to show how JavaScript actually works with jQuery in MVC is to actually do a demo. So that's what we're going to do now, and we're going to do a quick demo. We're going to get into tabs and do some dialogues, or some people call them modals, but in jQuery UI they're called dialogues, so just bear with me if I use the term interchangeably. So here we have a project that I had set up already for our time constraints. One of the first things I did is I wanted to create some views, some of our partial views within our project here. So I created one for our dialogue, I created one for products, which just mainly just has an unordered list, not doing anything fancy, just manually typed in, along with the users, again just manually typed in our partial views, because the main part of this demonstration is just to load these partial views with JavaScript. So in our controller, I actually created a shared controller, which now matches up with that shared folder, and they're basically vanilla action results, just returning those partial views, just like so. So that's our basic setup, and I'm going to be calling this from our main view on the home, so our index view. So I removed a lot of the default template jargon that comes with MVC, telling you how great it is and everything like that. Replaced it with some of my own HTML. Here we have tabs, this is jQuery UI. Oh, that was the other thing I should probably mention. If you're trying to follow along and do this on your own, if you go down to your layout page, you will have to reference two things here. You're going to have to reference the themes for the CSS for jQuery UI, otherwise it's not going to look right. And also you have to call the jQuery UI bundle, just like that. You call those two things, then you'll be looking good in your project. And because those two are default of the MVC4 template, that's all you have to do is just reference the bundles and you'll be good to go. So here we have just a tabs header, nothing crazy there, and your typical setup, and I believe this actually is very close to what the demo looks like out on jQueryUI.com. So here we have a div container just called tabs, an order list that creates our tabs across the top, tabs 1, 2, and 3. Here we have a preloaded, just with some Latin text there, nothing big there. And within tabs 2 and 3, I am calling a partial for our products and our users. Now, nothing fancy is going on there. It's just doing a straight partial call and showing the use of that. So with nothing more being added other than just a reference saying, hey, that div called tabs, that is a actual jQuery UI element, tabs. So that invokes it right there, and makes it an actual tabs control. So I'm going to go ahead and run this so we can see what it does right now. Okay, so here's our index page. As you can see, the jQuery UI tabs has loaded. Here's all of our Latin text, so it's manually typed in. If I click on products, here is the partial view of products that just did a simple list. And then if I click on users, again, it will just load that partial view of our users. Nothing fancy here, but it's showing how you can use partial views to segregate your data into several files to make it easier and cleaner to use and reuse elsewhere in the site. So I'm going to go ahead and close this now. And what I'm going to do now is I want to load these two partials based on some JavaScript. So you don't watch me type all that in. I am going to grab some of my code from before, just copy all of it and paste it in here. Okay, so this would do the exact same thing that this is doing right now. But let's just say that I don't want it to load, because you want to see this actually load via JavaScript. If I leave it the way it is right now, based on after the document is done loading, it's going to load up those partial views, so you won't get to see it actually load on demand. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create just a little anchor tag here that will allow us to load it. So we'll say load products for that one. And let's see, load products. And for the other one, obviously, we're going to say load users. Make sure I have that lined up. Alright, so this one's going to say load users. And again, we're going to put users here. Okay, now all I have to do is create some functions around these. So I can just say, let's see, actually we're going to do jQuery function, aren't we? So we're going to say load products dot click, create a function, and within that we're going to say I want you to run that function. Okay, so we just wired that up, and actually can make this really easy. All I do is copy and paste, and just make sure you change your change your words there, otherwise you'll wonder why it doesn't work. So, okay, so what I just did is I created two jQuery quick events and bound them to my anchor tags up here for load products and load users, which should go get the products, and the users, which are actually done down here. Both of them you can see are doing AJAX calls. The URL is just going to the shared controller, and then it's calling the action result of users, which is just returning a partial view. And if successful, which it should be, it is going to replace the HTML of the tabs-3 tab, which is defined right here. So it's going to replace that HTML, so this link will go away, and the HTML of the partial view will get put in its place. And the same thing with products, it's just calling the action result of _products in the shared controller, and if it works, it's going to replace the tabs.2 HTML with the partial view of products being called there. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it, and apparently I was in debug. That happens sometimes when you're modifying a view and the debugger won't yell at you. It doesn't care about views, it just cares about .NET. So anyways, I stopped it and I'm going to rerun it. Okay, so here we go. We have our Latin text as was there before. Get on our products. Now we have a link that says load products, so I'll go ahead and click that. And here we have instantaneously the HTML of the products tab was replaced with the partial view of products. Here we have users, should do the same thing. I click this, should load the users, which it did. So there's our partial view loaded with users. Okay, so now that you see how you can load the tabs with JavaScript, let's close this down and see how we load a dialog or modal. Again, just to save time, I went ahead and saved this off to a text file, just so you don't have to watch me type all this. Copy this, and I will paste this in here, just in its own script block, so we can see. And I just have to add the HTML up here, which I can do that, it's no problem. So I'm just going to say h3, we'll just call this a dialog, anchor tag, and give it an ID of open, oops, I didn't realize I hopped out of my anchor tag there. ID equals open dialog, okay, and we'll just say open dialog, pretty simple. And we need a div for our dialog, so go just call this dialog, pretty simple. Title, basic dialog, okay. And within this, I'm also going to do an anchor tag. In this, I'm going to give the ID of get dialog content. So again, this is going to be loading the content via AJAX, and I'll show you where that is. So down here, this is establishing our dialog or our modal in jQuery UI. It has a couple options that we're setting here on how to open, how to close. Here we're defining and wiring up our quick event for the open dialog element. And within that, we're saying dialog that we defined up here, we just want that to open. And then lastly, we're defining a function here of get dialog content that will happen when we click on the get dialog content. And the function's right here. It's another AJAX call, much like we did with the tabs. Again, I'm calling the shared controller underscore dialog content, which is the action result of that. And again, if it's successful, it's going to replace the content of the dialog with the partial view that comes back. And the partial view that comes back should look like this. This is the default dialog, yada yada yada. Okay, so if everything got typed in correctly, this should work for us. So I'm going to go ahead and save it and go ahead and click our debugger. Okay, So there's our tabs that we saw before, and down here we have Open Dialog link, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. And here's our dialog. So our dialog loaded, nothing special there. Now, when I click this is go do an AJAX call and go get the partial view and load it in here. And there it is. So our partial view got loaded in the dialog now via the AJAX call. So as you can see with these two examples between the tabs and the dialog here, you can actually take full advantage of using partial views and using AJAX calls to lessen the actual download time of the initial page, and you can just go fetch things as you need them or as your user needs them on the page. So your user experience should go up because you're not bombarding them with heavy downloads or too much information at once. So this should really help out in the design of your web application.